Welcome to Startup Chat number 55, and today we're going to be joined by Mr. Charlie Hoehn. Now, I've got a bit of a background here on Charlie. Welcome, Charlie. Nice to have you on the call.
Thanks for having me, guys.
I've put together a brief bio on you. We're going to ask you a few more questions about your background, but I thought I'd do a bit of homework myself. So,
Mhm.
Charlie is a writer and marketing strategist for best-selling authors and startups. He's a massive overachiever. You might have seen some of his work in the Recessionproof Graduate, and that's all about giving away your time for free to get to where you want to be. Charlie's also worked with Ramit Sethi, Tim Ferriss, Tucker Max, Seth Godin, and he has also built himself an app empire. He ran a business building an app empire. Now, we love Charlie because when we started out WP Curve, we actually went to him with our early stage pitch deck, asked him for a bit of feedback on what he thought we could do better with our business, and he said, hey guys, you need to fix your landing page. People are just going to bounce off that thing. So we did that. The reason we got Charlie on the call today, he's recently launched his new book. It's called Play It Away. You can get there. You can find the book if you jump onto charliehoehn.com. And I'm just going to read one passage from the book there, Charlie, if you're okay with that. And I
Yeah,
think it
totally.
really sets the scene for what you talk about in that book. So the passage is, for a long time, I thought I was going crazy. I'd convinced myself that something horribly wrong was about to happen. I thought I would be attacked or arrested every time I left my apartment. Now, Charlie's book's about anxiety, so you can check that out, as I said, at charliehoehn.com. And that's the intro, so now it's time to go into the Hoehn Zone. So welcome, Charlie.
Thanks so much, man.
You
Fun
got
to
it.
be here.
Now, we're going to take you through a pretty informal Q&A, and the first question that I've got for you is if you could take us, through your background and tell us a little bit about your experience and, what it's been like working with some of the most influential online people out there.
Yeah, so my background started because I graduated in 2008 during the recession, when the recession officially hit. And I spent a couple months basically applying to about 100 companies I didn't want to work for and getting ignored or rejected by every single one. And I kind of had a moment where I just thought, why am I doing this? This is stupid. I'm applying for stuff I don't want to do. So I'm going to just do stuff I want to do and reach out to people that I want to learn from and work with, that I admire and respect and want to become like. And I'm going to offer to help them out for free. And I'm going to, come up with ways to help their business and make their customers happier. And I'm going to do that by offering them my skill set, which I was pretty good at video editing. I was pretty good at online marketing and some technical stuff. And I started working with Ramit Sethi. I was helping him with video. I started working with Tucker Max. I was helping him with online research and marketing stuff for his movie. And then both of those guys, and I was also working side gigs and making money on the side, doing random odd jobs. And I sorry, I just got a message. And eventually, I was recommended to Tim Ferriss by both Ramit and Tucker, and I ended up working with Tim for a few years as his director of special projects. We started off working informally, and then I started getting paid, and then he hired me as his first full-time employee. And we worked for a long time together very harmoniously, and we accomplished a lot, and he introduced me to all his friends, and he gave me all these amazing experiences. But by the end, I started approaching my work. I started off by approaching my career as like an opportunity to learn and grow and do cool things and get these interesting experiences. But by the end, after we'd gotten through the 4-hour body and this book marketing seminar that we threw, we were on to the 4-hour chef, and he offered to double my salary. And I remember during that time, I felt very fortunate to be in that position, but I also was taking everything very seriously, because I was on this relentless quest to dominate and be indispensable and be really successful and make a lot of money and be prestigious and all this stuff. And I just couldn't stop working. I wouldn't let myself, and I was addicted to doing it. And eventually, I burned out. And after that, I should say, I ended up working. You mentioned App Empire, and I ended up working with a couple of guys named Chad Moretta and Jason Adams, and I met Chad at the book marketing conference that Tim put on, and we ended up working together for a few months after I'd quit my job with Tim because I got burned out there and some really awful personal stuff happened. And I worked with Chad for a few months and then quit that. And because I realized it wasn't a good fit and I was just doing it for all the wrong reasons. And that's when my anxiety kind of went through the roof, is after I quit those two jobs and had no idea what I was doing.
Wow, that was a download, and I think part of the reason why I think your book's going to be very successful is the fact that you really shoot from the hip with your experience and what you've learned and the challenges that you've had. Now, you've got two books that you've been working on. The first one's Play It Away, and I wanted to ask, you spent a lot of time in Southeast Asia writing that book, correct?
I actually was not working on this book while I was in Southeast Asia.
Wow, okay.
I worked on this book after, I didn't even know I was going to write this book until after I had gotten back from Southeast Asia. And so I got back, and I'd been working on another book, which was based on the ebook that I wrote several years ago, Recessionproof Graduate, how to get a job that you actually want by doing free work. And I'd been working on that, and I'd written about 125,000 words, which is pretty long for a book. And I had to cut out about 20,000 of those words. And that section that I cut out was arguably my favorite section in the book. And that's what I decided to make into Play It Away.
I see.
Yeah.
Now,
well,
I think... See you, Dan.
Sorry, yeah, I think you've just answered my first question, which was, well, actually, you haven't really answered it. So why did you decide to not launch the first book and launch Play It Away instead?
I didn't want to launch the first book because I wasn't happy with how it turned out. And because I had to cut out that section, that really disrupted the structure of the book. And I've been working on that book for several months. And, I started that book when I wasn't in the best mentality. And so a lot of it doesn't sound like the normal, like, happy me. A lot of it sounds kind of serious. And so I just wasn't really happy with how it was. And the thought of tackling it again and reworking it was like, I need to take a break and do something else. And I loved the content that I had to cut out, and I knew how important it was and how meaningful it was on a personal level to me. So I posted a blog post called How I Cured My Anxiety, because I figured, if this content's never going to see the light of day in that book, like, at least I can share part of it on my site. And that post took off. It's still the most popular thing I think I've ever written, and for the last, like, it's getting close to the last year, it's been in the top 2 results on Google for cure anxiety. So that kind of validated the fact that, like, there are a lot of people out there who need this information, who are probably suffering silently.
Yeah, so you pulled like a lean startup, minimum viable product without knowing it.
Yeah. Well, just kind of unconsciously. I didn't have that in mind, that I was going to write that book for even months after I put up that post. I started collecting email addresses a couple months later in that post, because it was like, I'm getting a ton of traffic. Maybe I ought to start catching some of this traffic. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you wrote, did you say 125,000 words for the first book?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I don't know if you would consider that the Hoehn zone, but to me that's a lot of writing. And
It's a lot.
I'm
Yeah.
interested to know how you get into that, mode. Like, what are your habits? What are your triggers? How do you, sit down and just get stuff out? Because that's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it took a really long time, and I hate to disappoint. There's no tricks. There's no tricks that I used. I did the hard way, and I actually have a friend who cranks out 10,000 words a day, and they're pretty good. And I know his tricks, and I can share those. But I'll tell you what I did first. I had 5 years of notes that I'd been taking on that topic for Recession-Proof Graduate, and so I started by just organizing those and getting them into a structure that made sense. And then I divided those up, all of them, into little mini chapters. And then I would just try and crank out a chapter a day, or at least the outline of a chapter a day. And I just kept going, and once it was done, I would print it off and I would read it, and I would always print it off and do hand edits and read it out loud, because it's really important to me for writing to be conversational, and because I hate reading writing that's like, who would say this in a normal like interaction? No one. So I always want my writing to be conversational, but that's my routine, and then I start over again, and I improve stuff, and I see how it is, then I print it again, and I make changes and rework and rework and rework over and over and over and over until I have something that flows pretty well. And Play It Away, I think, is a pretty good testament to that. It's easy to read in under 2 hours in one sitting, and it's not perfect. There's parts of it that I'm like, man, I wish I'd done a better job, but it's really solid in terms of being conversational and easy to go through. My friend, who writes 10,000 words a day, the way he does that is he speaks into Siri 30 seconds at a time and transcribes, and has Siri transcribe. And he doesn't edit. He just keeps going. And when he was explaining to me how he's so prolific, this guy's in his 30s and he's written dozens of books. And I'm not talking about the mini book that I wrote, the Play It Away one. That's a short book. I'm talking about books, thick books. And he's literally in the top like 1% of the most prolific authors on the planet, and or right now. Or on Amazon. I'm sorry, not the planet, which is effectively the planet. But he's just a machine, and it's really cool to see how he does it. So I'm actually gonna try his methods for the next book, at least the no editing method at the very least, because I find it's really easy to stop yourself and be like, I can say that sentence a little better. But when you don't do that, when you just plow, you can get so much done. It's easy to write 2,000 words when you don't edit.
I wonder who that could be.
Yeah, I'm trying to think who that is as well. We could just ask.
Alex, you do that?
We ask all the hard questions.
My apologies.
So
this is your show, not mine.
So let's move on to marketing, because you've been involved in marketing a lot of other books, and I've got a question around that. Do you have a couple of tips you can share for us selfishly, because we've got a book coming out and we'd like to know a couple of tips for marketing it, and then for other people listening, what are the big things that had a big impact on the people you helped?
To me, I think, like you guys helped me with this. The beta readers and the crowdsourcing the editing, I think, is so smart for any author to do. And I'm not saying that because I'm biased and I did it. That was an accident for me. Like it just, I couldn't believe how much it helped. And no matter who you guys would hire as an editor, if you guys paid a couple of grand to hire a professional editor, they're still not going to do as good of a job if you have a crowd of people who are wanting to read it because they're going to buy that book anyway. So, like, I was saying to a friend of mine, like he's doing a book for a really famous actor, and he's editing that book, and we were talking about how much it would make sense and how much like it would improve the book if we got it in the hands of the people who were like the big nerd fans of his films, and they edited the book, and in exchange he just threw a party for them at the end where they could come if they want to and interact with them in real life. And so instead of paying them money, some arbitrary amount of money, which kind of compromises the magic of the experience, you give them something special. And I say how important this is, and I'm really going to drill into the importance of making a great product, because all the marketing fluff in the world won't make a difference if you don't have a fundamentally great product. And by crowdsourcing your edits, you are getting rid of potential 1 stars on Amazon. You're getting rid of these bad reviews. You're preventing them. And you will iron out so many issues, and you'll actually increase your likelihood of making a great, great book that makes the people you want to read it really happy.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions to that. So with your review process, how did you choose who was involved, and did you send them like a comment only? And I probably should be able to answer this because we looked at it, but did you send them a comment only version, or were they actually going in and editing for you?
No, they weren't making edits for me. I sent everybody a PDF, and so in preview on Mac, on Apple computers, you can use the annotate feature and add in a comment. So I would just ask people to do that and just drop in their comments if they saw something that stood out as either confusing, something they didn't like, raise the red flag, something that they thought wasn't good, or something they really loved. And I basically just had everybody email the PDF back to me. And it was a trusting thing. I'm not like an important person or anything. I don't care if if the book's so good that it gets leaked or like put on a pirating site and people are actually downloading that. That's kind of validation that I have an amazing product. That didn't happen. So, but the product's still amazing. Don't get me wrong. But yeah, so it was just basically that's how I did it, and it was really cool because the way I picked these people was, I have an audience online, but people don't necessarily have to have an audience. They just need to have a way to find their target readers. I asked people on my blog to apply. I told them about the book, and I said, look, if you have a history in writing and you enjoy this process and you're a reader, you can apply to be a beta reader. But if the topic interests you, I'm really looking for people with anxiety who want to overcome it. And those people, several of them have become my leading testimonials, and so now I actually have validation that the stuff that I wrote works, and it gave me a chance to connect with my readers on a deeper level and get to know them, So for each person who made those edits, I made the offer to do a consulting call for free to talk about anything that they were struggling with. And so I also got myself an in with those people. I made a little relationship and a little connection there, and I'm when the book is out, which is going to be very soon. I actually get the proof today, but when the book is out, I'm going to reach out to all those people and say, guys, this is my last favor. I gave them all my book for free, but I'm going to say, guys, last favor, can you leave an Amazon review? And how likely are they going to be to do that? Very, very likely. We've all connected with each other, and they were a part of making this book, and they want to see it succeed now. They're invested in it. So I think that's one of the power moves that any author could make, is just to reach out to their ideal audience. And that's ultimately what marketing boils down to, is if people see stuff that Tim Ferriss does and Ramit does, and they're like, man, these guys are so great at what they do. It puts a lot of pressure on a lot of authors to perform and hit the bestseller list and all this stuff. And I think what marketing really boils down to is getting the people that you want to reach The people that will be really big fans of your stuff, the people that can't live without your stuff, reaching them and getting it in their hands, and having it be such a great thing that they cannot help but talk about it because it makes them look better, and it gives them more social credit among their friends. You know, the people who you know, you guys could probably tell because you read early copy, but I kind of made this book in such a way that if people share it, like, it's going to make them look better. You know, if they have a conversation about it with their friends, it's going to increase their status in some way while also making their friends' lives better. And I think just thinking about that, like, what is the conversation that's going to take place around our product or our service? How are people going to talk about this? How do they recommend it to other people? And you know, my sister texted me and she said, you know, I was talking to my class today and my professor, and I mentioned that you had a book, and he asked about it, and I was kind of grilling her. I was like, how did you describe it? Like, how did you describe this book? Because I want to know how people talk about my product, how they recommend it to others. And you want that to be a really simple, easy conversation for them to have. Like, it's the blank of blank, you know? It's the Bible for anxious people, or whatever. You want it to be really easy for them to recommend.
I was just jumping off mute there. So you talked a bit about marketing and the value of crowdsourcing and getting those edits back, but is there a key mistake that you see people make when they're trying to market their book? Is there something that a lot, like, people write and then they, you know, hope that they will come, build it and they will come mentality? Have you seen some of that stuff before?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that comes with everything. The main mistake I see every author make, not every author, but a lot of authors make. Actually, I'm going to list several. Okay, so
Awesome.
There's a big mistake authors make is thinking they have to still go through a traditional publisher. If you pick up a copy of my book, you will not be able to tell that this was self-published. This is, like, the reality is the quality that CreateSpace can print now, and what you can hire a professional interior designer on Elance or Behance.net. It's equivalent to a publishing house, and you can get it done in half the time if you know what you're doing. And you won't have to deal with the bureaucracy of, like, all the nonsense that traditional publishers tend to put you through. And I think authors consistently they think traditional publishers are going to help them sell the book, that because they got an advance, which is usually a negligible amount, but because they got an advance, it's validated their product, their book, and that their book is going to sell because they went with a publisher. Wrong, wrong, wrong. That's not the case at all. The publisher's not going to do anything to help you sell this book. The only thing they're going to help you do probably is get it into bookstores. That's the best thing that they can do. That doesn't mean it's going to sell once it's there. And if it doesn't sell when it's there, guess what? You're no longer in the store because you're taking up shelf space and bookstores are dying. So, like, publishers don't help with sales. They don't help with marketing. They do a pretty good job at producing the book, but anyway. So I think self-publishing is the way to go. And if you need like advice on how to do that, I've saved tons and tons of self-publishing links in my delicious bookmarks. If you just look that up, I can send you guys the link after if you'd like. But another mistake that authors make, this is the mistake that authors make when they're with the publisher, is expecting the publisher to help sell the book. They never do that. They have too many projects going on. You are in charge of your marketing. You are completely in charge, which is why I think so much of the marketing battle goes on while you're making the book. Like when I was working with Tim Ferriss, something I thought that he did that was brilliant was he would make chapters based on what titles he could see on his friends' blogs, like what kind of emails he could see his friends writing and being like, you guys have to check this out. because Tim Ferriss just discovered how to blah, 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 triple his fat loss by using ice. And, you know, Tim's really good at writing headlines, but like he was formulating chapters based on the conversations that his friends were going to have about his book to their audiences and making it as easy as possible. So another mistake this brings me to is thinking that you can befriend these people at the last second and have them promote your book. Not the case. I've been able to line up a lot of publicity because, you know, we have some sort of relationship. Like even with you guys asked me if I wanted to do this, and I said yes, of course, because we'd had a long talk on the phone, and you guys helped me with my book. Like, I'm totally happy to do it, and it helps me and it helps you. And but like with the other publicity, I have, you know, a lot of these guys are my friends. Like, you know, I've done so many favors for them over the last 5 years that like they're happy to help me. And here's the other thing is, like, even though I've helped them so much and they're willing to help me do whatever, I still do 99% of the work. I still, like, if I'm doing a guest post or something, I will show up with a pre-formatted, pre-linked, like everything taken care of in the post, including the introduction that they need to write to introduce me to their audience. Like, I've written everything. And so I make it as painless as possible for them to push it out. And the same, this is another mistake that authors, they think that traditional media is going to sell their book, is going to care about their book. It's not. Traditional media doesn't care at all. And you know, you're just another jerk who has a book. Great. Everyone, that's the same thing. What is the story behind your book? What is the trend? Where does this fall into? If I'm not going to approach traditional media for a while, because like I don't care as much. I want to sell the book first and have it come from credible sources, like, you know, Tim and Ramit and like people, actual people, not brands. But I'm not going to immediately reach out to media because you know, or when I do reach out to media, my stance is not going to be like, look how well my book is selling. You know, it did really well on Amazon. Aren't you guys interested in this book? No, it's going to be, I have 5 tips for people to prevent anxiety, and anxiety is something that's heavily trending right now. Or I have all these tips on how to incorporate play into your life, because play is actually amazing. I certainly didn't plan for this or notice it when I was making the book. Play is actually gaining traction right now in the news. It's kind of blowing my mind. It's becoming more of a topic. I think people are more aware of how deprived we are of it. But so basically, thinking that other people are going to help you and do all the work and actually care when your book comes out is a huge mistake that every author I see makes. And so many of these business authors come out with these BS awful books that have said like the same thing that every other business author has been saying for decades. They have nothing new to add to the conversation except for the fact that they're like, hey, I got a book. It's a business card. Want to hire me as a speaker? You know, and it's like, no one's read your book. No one cares. It's a bad book. Like, why write a book? Writing a book is the most miserable thing. It doesn't make you rich. All it is like a prestigious endeavor for all these people. They just want to feel like a success and say they have a book under their belt. Why do that? It's miserable. If you're going to write a book, only write a book because you have to, because it's not going to exist without your presence, and it's going to change other people's lives for the better.
That's a fairly big benchmark. I'll just throw my book in the bin. I want to go back to the idea stage, because I think you covered a little bit of it there. I had a question to ask you how you use your blog readers to come up with ideas, but I might just build that out a bit because I think you've covered some of that. But you mentioned Tim Ferriss, some of the Tim Ferriss techniques of looking at the headlines of email newsletters and blog posts. And I know you've got that Recessionproof Graduate one there in your back of your mind, and you mentioned before that there'll be another book What do you do to come up with the idea for the next book? And is the next one going to be the Recession-Proof Graduate, or are you just going to leave that for now?
I'm gonna come out with that eventually. It's that book does not exist. Like the I've read basically every career book, and there isn't there aren't any that are pounding home the message that needs to be pounded home. And so I'm gonna do that book eventually, but yeah, it's just I want to get through this one, and I want to get this one up and running, and this is something I care more about right now. But yeah, I don't know. Okay, sorry, what was the question again? I started with your last question. What were the two questions before that?
Yeah, so I mean, the original question was how do you use your blog readers to come up with ideas for a book? But
Right.
and I think you mentioned before that you were going to do another book, but maybe you were just saying like one day you'll put the other one out.
Right. Yeah, so Recession-Proof Graduate, that's like the working title of the next book. I don't know if I'll call it that because we're not in a recession, and that's kind of a topical word, and it's relative to everything. But I use my blog readers to come up with ideas basically based on the response to the posts, like the response to things I read. I wrote Recession-Proof Graduate in 2009. I get emails about it every week still, and you know, there's stuff there that is really useful to people in a very particular situation where they're feeling clueless about their career and they feel desperate because none of the stuff they were told was going to work is working. So I use my blog readers to share my ideas with and to gauge their response. Like the how I cured my anxiety thing, that I just wanted to write to share with people because I thought it was cool and it was really helpful for me, and it was like a fun piece to write. And then I got feedback from my readers, and it was overwhelming, and so I was like, well, clearly there's something to this. So
Yeah. Yeah, I love the idea for that Recession-Proof Graduate book. I think I heard you on a podcast early on. I can't remember which one, but I'll see if I can dig out the link and put in the show notes for this episode. But yeah, I guess if you're not in a recession, it doesn't make as much sense. But I think that whole idea of kind of choosing your own path and not just going straight into the workforce and doing it the way you did, which is sort of what Alex did, to join our company together, I think is a really cool thing, and there's not a whole lot of good information out there on that.
Yeah.
I want to just dig into a little bit of detail on the current book. I was having a look at it last night, and one thing I noticed that I thought was interesting was, and I think it's awesome, by the way, and I think I'm going to get a hell of a lot out of it.
Thanks,
so
man.
Let us know when it's kind of out there, and we can let our listeners know about it. But one thing I thought was interesting was in one of the chapters I noticed, and I don't know if this is an older version, but you had at the bottom like a little video summary.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk to that?
It's not a working link.
No, I know that, but just the idea behind putting that in like at the start, like is that for people who you don't think will finish the book, or is it just an added extra?
Yeah, so that's for people who sample it on Amazon and are lazy. So I include it in the first like 5-10% of the book because I want to get their email address and get a second chance if they aren't interested in continuing to read, which I think they will. The majority of them who have anxiety will. But in the off chance that they just want to see a video summary of the book and get everything from that instead of having to read, that's a lot of people. I want that option sometimes. So I'm just going to send them to that landing page and give them a video of the book and sign them up for a 10-day free course where I kind of walk them through the most critical parts of the book and give them free information about the book and say in each one, P.S. if you want to get a reference guide, like the book is there. So. And then that'll just be an ongoing marketing machine, basically, for the book.
So that comes up, like people who don't purchase it on Amazon will see that, will they?
Yeah, I mean, if they visit the link, yeah.
No, I mean see that page in the book. Like, do they see a certain amount of it or something? Or
Yeah, they only get to see 10% of the book, so I had to be careful about where I put that link.
That's interesting.
Yeah. A friend of mine did that for his book, and he mentioned he was able to gather several thousand email addresses by doing that. So I wanted to give it a shot. I don't know how well it'll work.
It's worth testing. Now, for the launch and sales targets and things like that, do you have, do you set sales targets? Do you work to sales targets, or do you just try and do everything you can and sort of cross your fingers and hope for the best?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I want to hit 10,000 sales like in the first 6 months. That would be really awesome for me. But that means I have to hit, over 1 million qualified listeners and readers and viewers, and that's an undertaking. Not just 1 million viewers and listeners and readers, but qualified. That's the key, is like people receptive to the message. And I think I can do that. It's just, it's a challenge. But I'm pretty certain the book will sell well over the long run. My goal is just to get it into the hands of as many people who want this stuff as possible, who want this information as possible. So, I mean, I'm going to be doing non-traditional stuff too. I'm going to be trying to do stuff for psychoanalytic societies and, stuff for elementary schools where I talk to groups of teachers and, just a bunch of stuff where I think I can actually make the most impact and reach the people who really want it.
Just to follow up on that one, have you documented any of the things you're doing as part of that marketing? Like, I could ask you here, but we'd probably be there all day.
Yeah, of course. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible about this whole entire process. I want to share everything with everybody, and I've been keeping track of pretty much everything. I just haven't had a chance to write it all up into a cohesive post, but I've been writing about this whole process on my site, and I've written a bunch of posts on the process of making a self-published book for a number of reasons. One, it's just kind of an interesting account for me to look back on and reference. But it's, like for people who are on the fence about whether they can do this stuff, I think seeing somebody else do it gives you the confidence that you can do it too. And I think a lot of people, I wrote about this in my last post, is just like, it's got to be hard for some people and very disconcerting when they see like my about page on my site, because it lists all these, highlights of my career, all the accomplishments and good stuff. And a lot of people might look at that and be like, oh, I don't relate to that, or that's really insufferable to look at. And the reality is like I really struggle with a lot of stuff for a long time. I failed so many more times, and I know that's like a cliche for entrepreneurs today, but I made so many more failures and so many more mistakes and went through so many more hard times. And I want to write about that stuff too. I want to be more transparent about that stuff and play it away. That book has really helped me start to do that and get more comfortable with doing that. Yeah, I want to share as much of this stuff as possible to show people that the only thing that's really holding them back from doing a lot of this stuff is the lack of knowledge, or just still being convinced that the world works the way it used to 20 years ago. Everything's changed. It's very democratic. All these tools are within our reach.
That's cool. If people are listening to this after the live broadcast and they're just listening to it on the podcast channel, if you head to startupchat.co/55, I'll put a few links up to those posts you talk about. One in particular, you talked about the cover creation. The cover looks awesome, and you go through every little detail. You even link to the designer. So yeah, that's going to be really, really helpful for people.
Thanks. Yeah, cover. We were talking about common mistakes authors make. I see a lot of self-published authors not take the time to make a great cover. I see published authors not take the time to make a great cover. I see publishers making awful covers all the time. It covers everything. Like I learned in the app world, we would split test app icons, and it could be the difference between no downloads and tons of downloads. It can be a 3 to 5x conversion very easily. And you don't realize that with book covers because there's no way of testing that, and no way of split testing that. But I know how important they are. They're everything.
Yeah, so you've mentioned a couple of tools in there as well. I just wanted, if we can go for a couple of minutes on the different tools you're using to actually publish it and sell it. You mentioned CreateSpace, and I saw that you were selling it on Gumroad. So are they two of the tools, and are there any others?
Yeah, Gumroad I'm using to sell the PDF, just because that's like an easily transferable file. So that's going to be the most expensive one, just because that's one that you can easily email and pirate and all that good stuff. And then I'm going to sell the book through self-publish the book through CreateSpace, which there'll be a paperback and a Kindle version. And then I'm trying to upload the iBooks file to iBooks, and there've been some technical issues with that, so it's had some trouble uploading. So I'm working with a coder to fix that stuff right now. But Gumroad, I love Gumroad. People know about obviously CreateSpace and Amazon and iBooks, but Gumroad isn't as well known right now. But man, what a slick interface. It's just so polished and solid, and it's intuitive, and it's just a cool way to sell digital stuff. It's worth checking out. If you sell anything online electronically, I would recommend them. They're pretty cool.
Okay, and what about the actual tools used to put the book together? Did you write it in Word and got someone to put it into the right format for those services?
I wrote it in Pages, and it's just because I hate Word. It's ugly, and I use Pages, and I would print it off at FedEx, coil bound, and do the hand edits and everything. And once I was done with that, I handed it off to a professional designer who designed it in InDesign. And this is a big mistake I made. Well, like for me, I was like, why did I do that? That was such a waste of time. I made the PDF 8.5 by 11, and the paperback is 5 by 8. And so I had to remake the entire book twice. And so, but a PDF is a PDF. Like, I should have just made the 5 by 8 and had that be the PDF. So that was a huge, enormous pain. Hundreds of messages back and forth, because my original interior designer was like, okay, we're done. And I was like, no, we got to do the 5 by 8. And she was like, no, like, I'm not doing that. So I had to hire somebody to take the 8.5 by 11 and compress it, which changes everything. It's not like Pages or Word, where if you move something and resize it, everything flows nicely. Every single element has to be redone. You guys know this. So it was an enormous pain.
That's interesting. Yeah, I've used InDesign. It's the first time I used it, it was like, how does this even make sense? It's really, really weird. I'm sure it makes sense to design people, but it just doesn't make sense to normal humans.
No, it's definitely like one of those things where, like, swallow your pride. If you're a control freak, if you think you can design a cover or design the interior of a book, don't. It is worth the few $100s. You will make it back if you have a good book, to hire a professional. Just do it. Don't do it yourself.
Good stuff. Okay, I've got one more question, and maybe this question was about the pricing of the book, because I saw that Gumroad page, and I think it was $17, which I thought was quite cheap, and I wondered if what was the thinking behind that, and whether the other versions, I guess they're more.
I'm curious. What do you think is a reasonable price point?
$39.
$39. I mean, that's the online marketer. Like, the price point you're used to seeing for an ebook, right?
Yeah.
But that's very like specialized information. And don't get me wrong, I thought about that a price point that high. The thing is like reasonably speaking, I felt conflicted pricing something that high. Like I wanted to compete with similar anxiety books in the category on Amazon, and I did a bunch of research on pricing, and they range between $10 and $13. And
Right.
so I knew my paperback had to be a certain price. I knew my Kindle had to be less if I want to get enough people purchasing it, not only who really need it, but who also are like, well, what the hell, I'll take a shot on this because it's under X number of dollars. And if the PDF is the exact same thing, except it's in color and 8.5 by 11, I can't exactly justify charging double for that and feel good about myself. So, but that being said, I have another, like what I'm going to do is a 6-week support group with limited seating for people who really want help getting over anxiety and actually like having somebody hold them accountable and really like commit to getting over it. Like, because the hardest part for anxious people is like having the focus each day to like just focus on the key things that can help them overcome their anxiety. So so I'm going to charge a lot for that. So I'm not too worried about the pricing. I'm more concerned about the book being read right now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I've got a question from one of our community members here, Jake Jorgovan. And the question here is, for someone who is a blogger and still building up their following, how would you recommend promoting your first book? Would you give it away or charge for it and promote it?
Well, there's no right or wrong. It depends on your goals. First of all, I would check out, what is his name? He writes such good stuff. I really like his stuff, genuinely. His stuff on book marketing. Is it Nathan Barry?
Nathan Barry.
Nathan Barry.
Yeah, he writes really good. Sign up for his like email newsletter where he talks about like how he approached it. I think it depends on your financial goals. It depends on your career goals. So for Recessionproof Graduate, the first ebook I wrote 5 years ago, I didn't charge for that. That was free. But because I did that, and I also had a link in it that was like, if you want to get my newsletter where I'll give away free career advice, sign up here. I built a 5,000 person email list without even really trying. I made a good book for people who needed help on that topic. And so now I have a long-term customer base, basically. And Tim Ferriss, he took the opposite route. The first book he wrote to sell and promoted the hell out of it, and he won big. It really depends on your goals. Like, do you want to build an audience, or do you want to try and actually make some money off of this book? What kind of book are you writing? That's a really important element that you need to take into account. You can make crazy money writing a book for a huge worldwide organization that you only sell to that organization by the truckload. You don't sell it to the average consumer. You can do decently as an author just by writing a book for the Susan G. Komen Foundation or whatever. So there's a number of variables to take into account depending on what your goals are. But I'm a big believer in giving away the best content, and I'm actually going to give away a number of copies and stuff on to people who want the book for a limited time to promote it. I mean, it's better to give it away than it is to linger in obscurity, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Charlie. The other community member question that we've got is from Mark Palmer, and he's asked you, how would you validate a book idea that is bouncing around in your head? What would be the steps to move forward after validating the idea?
Okay, there's a number of ways that you can do this. Let's say that you don't have a blog. Obviously I validated mine by writing a post on how I cured my anxiety, and the post did really well, and that validated the idea. But if you want to validate the idea, what I would do is offer to speak to specific groups on your topic. You know, speak for free and see what the reception is like to those talks, and record everything that you're talking about so you can transcribe it later if you need to, because then you can kind of actually be creating your book in the process of doing these speeches, and you can be practicing like and seeing what kind of stuff the audience asks about, what kind of stuff they respond to, if they're responding at all, and that's a good way to validate without ever having to type a word, and while getting your content in front of the people who you think will be most interested in it. And if their reception is lackluster, you might have to go back to the drawing board. You might not have a book on your hands, or you might need to reframe it.
Thanks, Charlie. And one supplementary question from Mark here is, how do you create your chapters? What is the thought process for really blowing out the content of your book?
It's a good question. Thinking back, what did I do? I just kind of laid out, like I started really simply, and I kind of, wrote out a few chapters, and then I wrote out a paragraph or two per section of like, what is the critical thing I want them to take away? Like, what is the big takeaway? You can even start with a sentence per chapter. So if you had to describe the chapter, you describe it in one sentence. And that's actually a good way to build out a book, is like each chapter, you write the headlines, then one sentence describing each, and then expand that into one paragraph, then a few paragraphs, and just see how well that flows and what that content looks like. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I thought of it. And again, we mentioned this earlier, but like Tim thought of it in terms of what kind of stuff could be posted on another friend's blog or in their newsletter that would make really good sense as content for them. So he thought in terms of, how is this going to get shared easily? What is that going to look like?
Awesome. Thank you for that detailed answer.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have something, Dan?
No, we're going to get onto the $2 million question.
Okay.
Well, I've got a $1 million question and a $2 million question. I think you answered the $1 million question, which was what's next after you've finished these two books.
Mm-hmm.
Is it correct in saying you'll be working on Recessionproof Graduate? Is that what's next in the pipeline?
I'm going to be working on promoting this book for a while, because this is something that authors tend to neglect too. Another mistake is they make a book, they release it, and they're like, my work is done. And it's like, no, it's not. You got to get your book out there. So I'm going to be, trying to get this book into the hands of people who want it. And while I'm doing that, I'm also going to be working on finishing up the other book. And if I self-publish that one, that would be cool. And but I don't know yet. I'll probably self-publish it just so I can get it out sooner. And then I have a couple other projects which I can't disclose because they're just too much in their infancy stages, and one is like kind of replicable actually. But it's a really good idea, and if I execute it really well, it'll be awesome. And it's one of them's tied into the concept of play. I'll give you a hint.
Awesome.
I came across one business that I thought was somewhat similar in spirit, but not the same business. So if you go to campgrounded.org, then you can check that out. But I want to do like a business related to play. I also have an idea for a health book that's very, very unique. No one's done it because it's really like dangerous. And I want to explore that. And it might not be a book. It might just be something I do. So I don't know. I've got a number of things, and just I'm excited to promote the concept of play. Like, I think that's a cool thing to promote.
I feel like you've got another blog post idea off the back of this podcast with the top 10 mistakes that authors make, because you've really riffed on those quite a lot, and that stuff's very helpful to.
Yeah, that's a good idea. When is this going to go like live on YouTube?
We're live
right away.
We're live right now.
Oh my God, this changes everything. That's not a bad idea. I know I could come up with more.
And we'll definitely use that when we're producing and promoting the work that Dan's put together. Now I've got one more question for you. This is the $2 million question. I don't know where I get these numbers from, but if you're an entrepreneur and you're afraid to take the next step in your venture, whether it's writing a book, starting a business, what advice do you have for these guys who are feeling this anxiety and don't know what to do next?
I would say start from like, what is the internal paycheck you're getting from doing this? Like, what is the amount of fun and happiness that you're getting just from trying this stuff? I think people get that anxiety because they attach like this result that they desire that they don't think they're gonna get. So they're like, if I make this startup, we're not going to make $1 million in the first 3 years, and so it's not worth it. But and so they become so intensely critical of a future version of themselves that they don't do it. And I've had this talk with so many, the quote-unquote entrepreneurs, but really I think it's just being a human. Is we put so much pressure on ourselves to be perfectionists and be great at everything and to dominate and totally have an awesome and epic life. But like in reality, it's just like, I'm 27 now, and that's a relatively young age to come out with a book, right? Mm-hmm. I've been working on stuff like this since I was 14 years old. And so to me, this feels like the next step. It doesn't feel like I've made it. It feels like, okay, this is another step along this path that's lasted me well over a decade of trying and failing. So I think it's just, I say just try stuff for fun. Just do it because you want to do it. Don't expect an outcome. And just if it's fun, keep doing it. Keep trying it again. Because the stuff that's really fun, the stuff that's actually rewarding, not because of prestige or money or status, but because it gives you a feeling of flow and fun and joy, that internal reward, that will propel you to keep going and keep doing it and keep getting better and better at it, and eventually you're going to be really, really good at it, impossible to ignore, and people will talk and you'll do fine. But it's a long process. Don't expect I don't know how anybody could expect overnight success, and I think it's just absolutely silly when people are like, I'm not ready. It's like, when are you going to be ready? Because all you ever have is right now. Like, there is no future date where you're ready. Like, that was actually my favorite part in Harry Potter. I forget which film, but it was like when he's like, when he's standing there and he's like, my dad's gonna come and this is so dorky that I'm saying this, but he's like, my dad's gonna come and release the Patronus, and when he's standing at the lake, and he's just like waiting for his dad. He's like, I know my dad will come, and then he realizes his dad's not gonna come because it was him, and like he needed to go do it, and I love that, and I also loved from Harry Potter as well when he's like, every successful person started where we are right now. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. Like, you might not have the same talents and strengths as other people, but everyone starts from the base level. And you can always work from wherever you are and pivot into something better.
Well, that's a very epic note to finish on. I feel like I need to put a YouTube video together with all of that value with some animation or something. That was pretty awesome. We covered a lot of ground on this, a lot of stuff that I wasn't expecting to cover, even though we kind of had pretty structured questions. So I want to thank you, Charlie, for coming on, and thank you for writing the book as well. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, definitely encourage everyone who's listening to head over to startupchat.co/55. We'll put up the links we talked about, and definitely get your hands on the book when it comes out. So thanks again, Charlie.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot, Charlie.
Take care.